asked God if given the chance to speak face to face. We have taken on several of those responses and tried to do research into biblical teachings, changing social norms, God's revelation to us through creation, and the ministry of Jesus, as we know through the Gospels, to search for possible answers. Last week, as you remember, Kristen talked to us about this meanness sort of theme, but by talking about it in the perspective of the nature of forgiveness, and then charged us with using that divine forgiveness that's given to us and then extending it to others. This week, I want to address probably the most popular question or theme, actually part one of Kristen's discussion. Why is there so much evil in the world? Or why are people so mean to one another? Actually, out of the cards turned in, that was the largest theme by far of everything. There were 13 responses that said one of those two questions. And I'd have those questions up here. Now, this is an intriguing question, and just so we all might feel a bit less hopeless against the dark side, if you will, I don't believe it's a new question. It just seems like the scope of the meanness and evil in the world is escalating with each passing year. Now, when I was just a little pipsqueak, I remember that the greatest evil in my elementary school world was the bully that would threaten to beat up the other kids for lunch money, for use of the kickball field on the playground, or just simply because he could. He preyed on kids that were perceived to be weaker and more vulnerable. But times have changed. Where the playground power structure was built on physical strength, a loud mouth, and a little intimidation, it has now become a lethal cocktail of firepower, mental illness, and an overestimated sense of entitlement. The article I quoted a minute ago was written in 2006. Can you think back that far? Now, it doesn't seem long ago, but with the housing crisis, the tank economy, and global unrest that happened during and after the time that this piece was produced, the world seems to have gone a bit mad and taken a lot of folks with it. Consequently, the meanness that was the topic for so long has become old hat. It has now been replaced with pure, unadulterated evil. Feel better? Of course not. This is a difficult topic, and there's no doubt as to why this was the most stated question on those index cards that you filled out several weeks ago. As I said, we have been scouring Scripture to find passages that deal with some of our biggest questions for God. And Isaiah seems to fit this particular theme quite well. Chapter 65 is a wonderful answer by God in response to chapter 64, which I didn't read for you. It's a lament by the people, a sort of question to God. Instead of asking why evil exists, they are instead confessing to it by saying, we've acted badly, chosen to turn our faces from you, and have become evil. Why is it, O God, that you have shown such restraint? Will you keep silent and punish us? Then in chapter 65 comes God's answer. I was available to you, but no one bothered to ask for me. I was here, but no one bothered to look for me. I kept saying, I'm here, but was ignored. I even reached out, but you turned your back on me. So I'm done. I'm finished completely. You'll wind up paying for your evil ways. Now that should make us feel better, but not really. So where do you go from here? Now, we could always fall back on our default whiny question, or at least our whiny thoughts, which is, what about me? Now, this is the perfect question for those of us that feel like we've been cast into a sea of chaos, a virtual world of the crazies. I mean, we do everything, basically, right? We do our dead level best to follow Christ when we think about it. We seek out God's will and we try to do it. We serve at the soup kitchen when it's our designated night. We work at the church to feed and house the homeless when it works into our schedule. We go down and sort food at Harvesters when we can think to call ahead and set up a time at the office. We put our ecological sensibilities to work when it's our day to clean up beside the highway. Oh, by the way, was that this week or last? Now, we're friendly with most of our co-workers, especially those who share our political and theological views. And we hardly ever fly off the handle on the job, calling everyone stupid and threatening physical violence toward our boss. For those of us who have this kind of pious existence, we deserve better. In the blink of an eye, it seems like God should straighten everything out so we could all live these fine, upstanding lives, like me. But for some reason, God doesn't seem to be answering that prayer. For some odd reason, God's attention seems to be turning to the homeless, the hungry, the less fortunate, the ones living in poverty, and yes, even the perpetrators of evil. So what about me? Or then again, what about me? Could it be that somehow I am not the exception? Could it be that I actually contribute to the problem? I mean, it's all relative. I know I wouldn't put myself in the same category as those hardened criminals, but I suppose there is an outside chance that I could do a better job of living in a way that's pleasing to God. I do consider myself a Christ follower, but I really enjoy hanging out with my friends, and we do like to talk trash about some of our less appealing neighbors. Doing God's will in the world is important to me, but honestly, with all the hardcore theology I see in some churches and on religious TV programs, I'm not really sure what God's plan is for me. I'd like to do more service projects with others in my church, but can't seem to find the time to do it between family commitments, work, and of course, my love of sleeping in on the weekends. Service is great when I can make the decision on the fly and just show up. I'm not much into planning ahead just to sling some hash or cut down some weeds. I wish I could be kinder to my coworkers, but none of us really want to be there after all. I have to have this job to pay the bills, but I can sure think of a lot of other places I would rather be. Wow. I guess I really do have room for improvement. When we talk about evil and hatred and meanness in the world, we can't deny the fact that it exists. And moreover, it's getting worse. But we also have to acknowledge that we're part of it. We can't escape it. There is some hope in this seemingly hopeless situation. According to Isaiah, in our last few verses for today, God says, one apple doesn't spoil the whole batch. It's redemption. You made some mistakes, but it's going to be better. I promise. In addition, our editorial by Dina Gorga says that even though we don't want to be nice for nice sake, or when we don't want to speak to someone just to be polite, or we don't want to interrupt our daily schedule to help someone in need because it's just a good thing to do, we should anyway. To do so just may change someone's day for the better, and ultimately change ours as well. I'm not really sure what you might call that, but in my mind, it's living out my faith and doing the work of God in the world.